Let's look at the content that New World needs to add to actually succeed. So this video is not going to talk about like changes to current systems that I wish they would implement. No, we're going to be looking at the big new content that will take time to implement. So I'm not talking about the expertise gear score system or anything like that really. The biggest example that I can think of that will explain this is raid content. Now I don't mind if this is either instanced or in the open world. But yeah, most MMOs actually have raids, so it would definitely not be uncommon or unexpected, and I do think it's a little bit strange in a way that they're absent in New World when they decided to pivot the type of game. Now if they were to add raids, I do think it would actually mess with the way that gear works in New World at the moment, because even though I said I'm not going to talk about like systems, I do think that the gear methodology right now is a little bit janky, and the way that you get progression in gear wouldn't really work with the progression in difficulty that the raid would offer. But really, people like raids in other games. It allows you to have better PvE rewards because the content is a little bit more difficult, even in just coordinating that many players to do the content. One thing that stands out to me in this summer July update, we are getting a new expedition which is called Barnacles and Black Powder, and I just personally don't think that is something we need right now. It's not really adding too much to the game apart from a little bit of variety. A lot of people already have really good gear, bordering like best in slot gear, and a lot of people are gear score 625, so there isn't really a massive reason to run this expedition. Sure, there might be a PC in there which is just really good, and you know, you don't want to spend 300k to buy it, so there will be reasons to run it. I just think at this point there's a lot less reason for most people to run it. I still haven't actually done the depths mutation because I just haven't needed to. Now I don't mind the introduction of a new expedition. Obviously it's not a bad thing, it adds more variety and it does add a way of getting like certain kinds of loot. That's good, right? I'm not denying that. And with this addition we now go to like 5 end game expeditions. That's really quite good. I just can't help but think that if this expedition wasn't a 5-man expedition but was instead released as a maybe like 15-person raid that dropped like gear score 625 best in slot, that it would be so much cooler than just a normal extra 5-man dungeon. I just personally don't feel that New World adding in this content is really worth it as opposed to what they would have got if they added a raid. But that's just my personal opinion. Maybe they have a reason that I don't know. Now as for the open world bosses, a lot of people like that as an idea. You just have a big boss that's out in the world and you need a lot of people to kill it. Yeah, it sounds nice. However, for my taste, they're actually relatively difficult to balance because you need to have it so that it's worth doing, but you don't necessarily want it to be so worth doing that people are endlessly like spawn camping it, trying to kill it in the middle of the night and stuff like that. That will mess up with people's like actual healthy life balance. But I guess it wouldn't be a problem to have like a big Raffle Bones, like an elite version of him that sort of required a raid. That'd be quite cool. Obviously I think at the minute New World has sort of killed off Raffle Bones because people were not abusing it but using it to its maximum potential. But yeah, like open world for me it's a very like questionable thing. You either have the rewards so good that everybody wants it, or you have them so they're not very good and nobody can be bothered doing it anyway. Tough balance that one, I think, personally. Anyway, I'm not going to dwell too much on raids. We know they are working on them basically because every time they've spoken to like Asmongold or somebody like that, he keeps asking about them and they're all like, oh, wouldn't that be nice if we were working on raids? And it's like, yeah, of course you're working on raids, right? Makes sense. And I'm personally expecting it to be when we get the first proper paid expansion to the game. But who knows, they might shock me and do it in a patch or something like that. I just think that a lot of the effort that they're putting in other content possibly could have been funneled into the raid content, so we had a variety in game type modes as well, basically. And in a similar vein to that, the next content I would like to see is another battleground. Now, I suspect that we're waiting for Cross Realm before they do something like this. Cross Realm obviously is also another thing that they really need to implement. I've spoken about that a few different times. It's sort of like a system though, rather than actual content, so I'm not really talking about it too much here, but we obviously need Cross Realm for a variety of reasons. But yeah, Outpost Rush right now is literally probably my main type of content outside of the occasional bit of gathering. And quite frankly, it's getting a little stale after many months of just playing the same Outpost Rush map. I said instead of doing the expedition they could have done a raid. Well, I mean, I would have liked a different battleground map instead of a expedition as well. That way we would have had 4 expeditions and 2 PvP battlegrounds and 1 PvP arena. That'd be fine. I would have liked that. I understand that maybe doing a new battleground straight after arena might have been a little bit problematic, but it is what it is. But on the whole scale, the game is about 10 months old and we still only have the 1 PvP battleground, the Outpost Rush map that we know and sort of love. I personally would love maybe a capture the flag mode or even like King of the Hill mode modes. I don't know, just mix something up so that we can actually have a bit of variety in play. I appreciate that the queue would be a problem, because at the minute, would you just get queued into battlegrounds and then would it put you in one randomly, or would you have to queue up for the individual battlegrounds? And at the minute, without Cross Realm, that would be a bit awkward. So I think Cross Realm will probably be the instigator for this, and maybe that's what they're waiting for, just so the queue times are a little bit more reasonable. More battlegrounds, pretty simple. The next one is a little bit more open-ended. I would like to have more solo PvE content and more optional grinds. So for solo play, it's a little bit hard and a little bit vague, but I would be very much open to the idea of maybe having like expeditions that you can do solo, which, you know, give the player a little bit of a challenge. You can give them a good reward because you set that challenge, and it might be something that you can actually repeat, because right now there isn't really many ways for you to log on as a solo player, go out in the world and improve your character. I think with the new patch, they're adding some areas where there's some good items dropping from some 63 level guys, but in general that's just going to go and farm a mob. There's not like a fun challenge in the game really, and I think maybe like having actual planned solo content would be really cool as well. Obviously it's an MMO, I don't think all the content should be soloable. Let people log on. If you don't want to spend time with your friends or whatever, you just want to spend time like maybe an hour or so, do a solo expedition or something. Yeah, that sounds great, let them do it. Add another string to your bow, is that the phrase? Maybe. And then the next one is optional grind. So let me just say, I am 100% not a fan of grinding in MMOs in general. I just simply don't have the time or the inclination to do so. I'm a pretty casual player and I plan to stay a pretty casual player. If you make the grind be too strong, I'm just not going to play your game, right? It's as simple as that. If I have to grind so much to stay relevant, I'll just not bother. But I think New World is missing optional fun grinds. Sure, you can sort of try and grind specific items in specific areas, and that's getting better as I mentioned. Beyond that, there's not really much you can like grind as either a solo or as a group really. I sort of enjoyed the rabbit chest in a way where it was like you kill a lot of rabbits and you're trying to get a random like chest spawn. I didn't like how random it was in the end, because it was both random and time gated in a way that you had a time limit, and many people, myself included, killed a lot of rabbits and didn't get it right. Feels bad, man. But I didn't really mind it in a way, because if you would have taken off the time, like the time of the deadline, I think that would have been a fun way of just keeping it interesting. Like it would have been a nice little thing in the game. Personally, if you're going to add like the time limit on it, they should have also made it like a quest where it was like, hey, if you kill 1,000 rabbits, you're definitely going to get it, or something like that, right? Either way, it was sort of fun because I logged in and I had something to do that was just in a way almost pointless because the reward wasn't that great, but it was a challenge. So I was like, well, I'll do it just for the fun. We don't really have enough of that, I think, in New World. So I wouldn't mind having superficial or basically non-power drops dropping in specific areas that people can go ahead and farm and it be completely random. A little bit like the fishbowl. So the fishbowl is like a furnishing item that's very like sought after, but as far as I know, it drops from the elite chest. What if that just dropped from some undead skeletons in one specific area? Granted, one specific area would mean it was found like buggery, but you get the idea. And if you do that, but for many more items, you end up with interesting gameplay around the actual open world. Imagine on that fishbowl example, if you had to go farm it in a specific area. But what's that? Having PvP on increases the chance of you getting it. Boom, chaos. All for a fishbowl. Sounds like it could be fun. So I would like more specific area drops, if that makes sense, that are just sort of not power related but fun related in the open world. And then the next thing is I would like some optional grinds with like reputation, which will let people feel like they're progressing a little bit, but maybe not for player power. So imagine if we took the town rep system at the minute where it's like territory standing, but like you repurposed it so that as you got higher and higher, instead of getting the little cards, maybe there was a vendor, and from that vendor you could get maybe like furnishing items, maybe you can get flags, maybe you can get unique outfits and like emotes and skins and all that kind of good stuff. So you have a reason to really dedicate your time into one zone, but you're just doing it for fun. There's no actual like power behind it. Now I do think the territory standing grind would be pretty dull, and especially now you just shortcut it by like crafting the new stuff from the stonecutter, but you get the idea. If you did that in specific areas, maybe you could just have fun content that gave players something to do without them needing to do it. And I think that's the key thing. Things like the summer and the winter fur, they've been really good because that is effectively that, but it's only at like certain times of the year. There's nothing really there that gives you much power, if any power at all. So players have fun with it because it is designed just to have fun. We need more of that stuff just throughout the world in general. And I just mentioned sort of skins very briefly. A transmog system is basically the next thing on this list. Quite simply, we need a transmog system. The fact that you can't change your appearance without either buying a skin or a Twitch drop or something like that, to me is very sad. bad and all around stupid. It's great though for Amazon because you pretty much are almost forced to buy a skin to look good, but I think it's terrible for the players and we all sort of don't like it. You can get an in-game item that just looks great, but the stats are terrible and you can't really use it, and that just feels bad. You might as well throw it away. I do like the fact that at the summer and winter fair and that kind of thing, you can actually get skins by doing it. That I think is great. I really like the fact that they have that rather than having to pay. You can actually do something in game to get them, but then they're not necessarily like cool looking. They're generally a bit goofy, but that's okay. For me though, we obviously need either a proper like World of Warcraft transmog system, or we need a way in which you can take an item and distill it down into its visual component and then apply that to a new item. And I don't mind if you do that via armoring and weaponsmithing. And honestly, I actually don't mind if they do this item distiller on the paid store. Just give us a way to do it, otherwise it just feels weird. We need a transmog system. Most people agree. They're probably working on it. Just do it, get it done, add it to the game. Okay, now let's talk about mounts. So mounts is actually a bigger issue than it first appears. If they just add mounts without really thinking about it, it could be almost as bad as not adding mounts, I think. Right now you can pretty much teleport anywhere you want on the map for effectively nothing. The Azoth cost is so low, and with the gameplay as it is right now, most people probably don't even need a mount. We're all like level 60, all the teleporting areas are unlocked. The only people who really need it are farmers and crafters, right? Like that's it. But it's not a big issue right now, but it'll get more important when we get a new zone like Brimstone Sands and when we get an expansion. However, I think a lot of people just like mounts and they think they are cool. Not only that, a lot of people did a lot of running about whilst leveling in New World and they really didn't like it. And obviously mounts would have helped with that drastically. Along with that, obviously if you start selling mounts, well, what else can you sell, Amazon? You can sell your cosmetic variants of those mounts. Cosmetic skins, quite popular. People like to buy that, unless you're Asmongold in World of Warcraft because he's not happy with the fact that you have to buy the game and sub to the game, which is fair enough. But in general, people will buy those skins because they'll be like, hey, I want to look cool while I'm riding my horse, my elemental stag, or whatever the hell it is, right? There would be some big questions when it comes to mounts, like, are you going to be able to fight on the mount? Or are you just going to be like instantly dismounted when you get attacked? Can you mount if you're PvP flagged? If you can't mount while you're PvP flagged, farmers will complain. And if you can mount while PvP flagged, will we then just be hurting open world PvP even more because people will just be running about too quickly and you won't be able to catch them? Maybe. We'll let Amazon figure that out though. I have personally said before that I would have loved to have mounts at the start of the game and then have, instead of all the little teleporting points along the world, I would have had maybe some sort of like horse and carriage system that just teleported you between cities and then you run about on your horse or whatever just to go from point to point. I feel like that would have kept people more connected to the world. Like an MMO full of convenience is actually perhaps a little bit like not very impactful for the player's mind, because if you can teleport everywhere very easily, you don't see the world, you don't feel connected to it. Having it so you could just teleport from city to city and then having to run about on your mount, I think would have been a nice compromise. And maybe we'll actually see that in an expansion. Maybe they'll do something like that and they'll just remove a lot of the teleporting points apart from the ones in the city. That'd be fair enough. I would understand that as well. You could even use the law and be like, oh, the Azoth teleporting is not working in this area. You know, it's doable. So I think mounts is something they do need to add. We'll probably get it in an expansion and a lot of people will enjoy it. There are some key questions to ask of how it will actually work though. And there's probably more content that they should add. Like they definitely should add something to the open world PvP. I'm just not sure what example I could give that would be good enough for me to talk about it. I like the idea of maybe having like the basically stealing from Albion Online and having these like chaos portals that you go in and you like fight 1v1 or 1v2 or 2v2, 3v3, whatever it is. I don't actually know, I don't play that game. That sounds cool, but it doesn't actually help the open world PvP. For open world PvP, I think we need sort of like more fort-esque things just spread around the world and you get like hotspots. But I don't know, I don't have any great suggestions. I'll let Amazon try and come up with something there. But apart from open world PvP, raids is an obvious one. More battlegrounds or another outpost rush would obviously make sense. More solo play and more optional grinds would be pretty cool, I think, in general, and healthy for the game. A transmog system would very much be a good casual kind of content, and mounts would be both good for just all the players and the casuals when it comes to like cosmetics and stuff like that. If New World adds all of these and they fix the current problems with the systems, like for example, I really don't like how the territory owners of Everthorn Wings would get so much gold, and I'm just going to talk about that all the time. But if they fix those kind of issues and they add this type of content, then the future of New World would be very bright. Let me know if you think I missed anything obvious. Put that in the comments below. I do read and try and reply to absolutely everything, so please do so. Have a most beautiful day. Like and subscribe. Goodbye.